really transforming policy making in India. I'm particularly delighted that he was available to make this presentation today. I know that he's involved with a lot of committees and is right in the thick of the action of dealing with this COVID pandemic. Amitabh, thanks a ton for agreeing to make this presentation. I don't want to take up any more time and will request Madhav to go ahead and moderate this session. Madhav is the head of our Cities and Transport program. He's the Executive Director for Cities and Transport in WRI-India, which is the biggest program that we have as part of WRI-India. Over to you, Madhav.
Thank you very much, Shopi, and welcome again, Mr. Kant. And I think without wasting any more time, I will hand it over to you to talk about India's approach to green hydrogen. So over to you, sir.
Thanks and welcome to my co-panelists. I will try and make this presentation at about 20 minutes time. I'll zip through it because I think a panel discussion or interaction would be far more useful to everyone. But let me raise the approach, what we are trying to follow, and I would be very happy if your inputs could help us to improve upon that, or you know, it's also a learning process for us, so we'll greatly benefit from all of you. Yeah, so let me first say that you know, India's renewable industry is today about close to 93 gigawatt, and we've been able to bring down the solar prices to about 1.99 kilowatt hour. And this kind of gives us a very, very unique opportunity for a green hydrogen revolution in India. And that is my focus today, because if you look at energy, we do imports of about 160 billion, which are going to keep rising, probably will become double in the next decade. We are aiming to be a 450 gigawatt nation with a 5x increase from today. We are the third largest emitter of at about 3.6 in the world today, and therefore all these are challenges, and green hydrogen gives you that answer. It can help India transition to be a climate leader, and it can help us to mitigate the emissions. It can radically help us to import our reductions. So India already imports, as I said, about 160 billion worth of energy inputs. The breakup is given here: 112 billion of crude and close to 10 billion in gas imports. This is a huge drain on our foreign exchange. The volatility in the prices of these resources is a great threat to India's economy. And our chemical industry is also totally dependent on imported natural gas. And these are the challenges. Now, it's important to understand that basically only 18%, and this is very important because only 18% of the total energy consumption is in the form of electricity. And we may bring in renewable energy in electricity, but the rest 82% is what needs decarbonization. And this is very important because oil is 85% import, coal is 24% import, gas is 53% import. And therefore, decarbonizing 82% of the energy sector is what is important. It's not just the electricity sector, it's the 82% of the other which needs deep decarbonization. And that's important. So not all hydrogen are created equally. You have brown hydrogen, which is produced via coal gasification. It is the most polluting form of hydrogen. You have gray hydrogen, which is made from natural gas. It's produced by a process called steam methane reformation. of natural gas, and these emit large amounts of carbon dioxide. Then there's blue hydrogen, which is produced via natural gas but combined with carbon capture storage or carbon capture use technologies in order to reduce carbon emission. And then there is green hydrogen, which is produced using electrolysis of water with clean electric power. Now, it's very simple. Electrolysis is actually a 60-year-old commercial technology. India already has many medium capacity electrolyzers in chemical sector to produce compounds like caustic soda. And the same technology and advanced versions of this technology can be used to make green hydrogen. And India already has companies building world-class, some world-class electrolyzers. And the electrolyzer technology is used to split water via clean electricity to produce emission-free hydrogen. Now, what we are seeing in India, and this is really the big advantage, that the price of delivered power is the biggest driver of cost of green hydrogen. India's recent bids at about 2 rupees per kilowatt hour in solar is amongst the cheapest in the world. And India also has competitive wind tariffs. And this gives India the advantage, really, this gives India the huge advantage to disrupt the hydrogen industry. This is the big advantage. Now, a recent study by the Hydrogen Council, which works in partnership with McKinsey, has analyzed the global potential for hydrogen leaders. And India, with its falling renewable cost and India's innovation with round-the-clock tenders and some hybrid renewable power, actually, they've concluded that if India takes all the right policies, India will actually be a net exporter of hydrogen by 2030 with $1.5 per kilogram hydrogen cost. And round-the-clock power is key for providing stable power load for electrolyzers, which needs around 80% capacity utilization to be viable. Hence, solar plus wind plus battery seems to be the standard model for green hydrogen projects. Now, actually, the hydrogen is, H2 is used as a feedstock. It's in proven use cases with the only change needed in generation technology. It's suitable across sectors, refining, fertilizer, steel, chemicals. Users of hydrogen as energy is upcoming, and it has far-reaching implications, because what it can do is to really transform these sectors. And why I'm saying this is that all these sectors, actually, the world is now going to pay a premium. The world will increasingly pay a premium for carbon-free products. And therefore, as the climate change talk moves forward, you will see, and yesterday what Mr. Biden has done is to bring down 50% reduction in their carbon emission by 2030. So they are really pushing hard now. So green H2 can really, address a huge amount of India's emission. India is the third largest emitter in the world behind China and USA. While China has already announced a net zero emission by 2060, USA by 2050. And the main promise of green hydrogen lies in decarbonizing hard to decarbonize sectors, which I've shown here: steel, refining, shipping, etc. And shifting from natural gas, coal to green hydrogen can help us to really clean up these sectors. And as I said, the world is going to demand these. Now, one of the advantages which India has is that India already, hydrogen is a very major chemical used across multiple industries: refining, ammonia and methanol, and current production of hydrogen from natural gas, that is gray hydrogen, which emits large quantities of CO2. So India uses actually 6 metric tons demand of hydrogen is already there. And India actually uses about 8.5% of global demand. So this is a recent report by Theri that India uses 6 MT of hydrogen. And this is one of the potential areas where from gray we can move to green hydrogen. And India's hydrogen sector, few geographies which is actually expanding capacity, if you can use it in refining steel fertilizer, there will be, there's a huge possibility of actually moving immediately from gray to green hydrogen. So we've tried to look at some of these issues and the economics of all that. The other point I wanted to make was that India's commitment towards a very, very ambitious commitment, and we've done very well so far, is of 450 gigawatts by 2030, which will be extremely difficult without green hydrogen. Because you will in India's current renewable power installed capacity is about 92, 93 gigawatt. To reach 450 gigawatt, India has to increase its capacity by 5 times. And, this huge capacity addition will pose very severe challenges for the grid while integrating it. With more integration of renewables, the time gap between peak production and peak demand will widen and lead to duck curve, as has happened in California, and will pose risk of grid collapse. And therefore, India running out of demand for solar and renewable energy sources, we need to find additional utilization resources. And that's important because, beyond this, beyond 120, 130 of solar, we'll run into this problem. And as you go in for bids for 24/7 and hybrid, etc., you will find that the bids will get more and more expensive. And you need to find, for going up to 450 gigawatt, you actually need to push for usage of renewable for green hydrogen. So what needs to be done to succeed in green hydrogen? One is that we need to first cost target about $1 to $1.5 per kg by 2030, have very clear 2030 targets. We need to unlock demand for green hydrogen. We need to tap into green hydrogen export market. And we also need to push for developing an electrolyzer market. So it's very important for India to bring green hydrogen at parity or cheaper than gray hydrogen. We should be able to unlock domestic demand. We need to spur real shift from gray to green hydrogen. And there's a large export opportunity exists in future with countries like Japan, Singapore, Korea, all looking to establish international green hydrogen value chain. And these countries neither have the land nor the renewable potential which India has. And manufacturing electrolyzers actually is a huge $20 billion opportunity. So my view is that hydrogen's high calorific value available in multiple forms, such as water, and the potential to transport hydrogen in multiple forms, gas, liquid, ammonia, makes it a very, very versatile fuel. The primary use will come from industrial applications like oil, refining, fertilizer, steel, heavy duty transport, and industrial heat, without which you can't get into transportation sector. For you to get into long distance transport is important, but you can't, it will not be commercially viable without making it viable to replace gray hydrogen by replacing it in oil, refining, fertilizer, steel. And, fertilizers need urea, urea needs ammonia, ammonia needs hydrogen, and therefore India is expanding its gas economy, and green hydrogen blended with gas will make the gas economy even more green. And therefore, if India has to emerge as an alternative transport, if hydrogen has to emerge as an alternative transport fuel, especially for heavy duty commercial and city to city transportation, hydrogen fuel cell transportation is only feasible at low prices only if we are, and this is only if we are able to create demand in the other sectors of the economy. Since hydrogen can be stored for seasons, hydrogen can be a long-term storage option, and hydrogen ammonia can directly be used in gas power generators. Now, basically, this slide I'm trying to show that the green hydrogen ecosystem, renewable power plus water, you need electrolyzers, there's the ammonia route, there's a direct green hydrogen route, and direct green hydrogen route will give you oil refining. Green hydrogen can be used for oil refining or city gas blending or steel or heavy mobility. And green hydrogen plus nitrogen from atmosphere can be used for converting ammonia, fertilizer, industrial use, marine fuel, seasonal energy storage, all this. So huge possibility. And as I had mentioned, there is a huge opportunity for electrolyzers, which is a central component of the green hydrogen economy. We already have a very nascent hydrogen component ecosystem. And globally, there's a huge supply bottleneck for electrolyzers to the tune of about 90 gigawatt. And there is a possibility for us to capture this market. And probably as we move forward, we'll need to have a production linked incentive scheme in this sector. So how do we achieve success of hydrogen economy in India? This is the challenge. So first and foremost, I feel that there is, much like we've created demand for solar, renewable solar, we need to create demand mandate-based approach, push for mandates, create the right policies for market creation. And this is very important as a policy. And we need to have a very progressive and stable regulatory framework. These are three aspects which are very critical to initiate adoption of green hydrogen and ensure a stable demand in future. So based on the viability gap analysis, which we've done in Niti Aayog with some of our global partners, we need to scale up hydrogen in the most efficient way. And we envisage the following rollout phases. The first phase will be refinery and ammonia, CGD blends, exports, and then green steel, industrial heat, and then heavy duty vehicle, seasonal storage, and then subsequently all energy application. Our view was that it's important to have, first and foremost, what we are looking for is an aggregator, a credit-worthy aggregator, which will put out demand on a regular basis for hydrogen. And I'm really delighted that the Power Minister, Mr. R.K. Singh, has already moved on this front to see that we float demand for hydrogen for fertilizer and refinery sector. We're working on a very long-term tax duty incentives, and we build up cross-sectoral and bold policies giving clarity to investors, and then push for local manufacturing in all these areas. So we've looked at all this, and our view is that there has to be target setting, very ambitious targets for green hydrogen, so as to ensure that you are able to do 450 gigawatt of renewables for 2030, and targets to be based on electrolyzing capacity, cost of hydrogen, etc. Then there has to be a demand creation mandate, that is mandate blending of percentage of green hydrogen in key sectors, which I've said, and greenfield projects to use green hydrogen from a future cutoff date, and build sectors like green steel for climate-linked exports, and work towards an Asian alliance with Singapore, Japan, Korea, which are working towards their requirements being met through green hydrogen. And the other is to have viable contacts and PLI incentives. And one of our thinking was that to really think of dollar-linked contracts for hydrogen procurement, much as it happens for oil and gas sector. And as I said about a PLI incentive for electrolyzer sector. So we looked at the targets, different targets, and our view was that in the near term, we need to focus on rapid gigawatt scaling through refining and fertilizer sector, which is most where you get the best economic benefits. The cost differential is the best in refining and fertilizer. Then in the midterm, go for city gas distribution and steel gas based DRI. And thirdly, in the long term, look at unlocking power and heavy duty trucks, etc. So we are working with this approach of near term, midterm, and long term. So on the near term, the focus really is about looking at targets, refining and ammonia, and the actions are 100% green hydrogen in new urea and refining capacity, and blending mandate for old plants in urea and refining, and action 3, green ammonia for exports, and then scaling up electrolyzer in this manner, which we've spelled out here. And for the medium term, we look at gas blending, investing in R&D and pilot for impact testing and hydrogen blend limit in existing infra, and really look at the steel sector, where again, to our mind, there will be a push from EU and the US for carbon-free steel, and this will become, you will have carbon pricing, taxes for competitiveness against coal-based technologies, especially blast furnace and all that. So you have to move towards that, and you will get a premium for that. And long term, we are looking at power, that is seasonal energy storage using hydrogen and gas generators, and heavy duty trucks. And heavy duty trucks will become commercially doable. To our mind, hydrogen is the best for commercial vehicles and for long term city to city movement. But this will become viable if we force the use, mandate the use of hydrogen in other refinery and fertilizer. That is possible because you are already doing 670 of gray hydrogen, and you push gray hydrogen towards green hydrogen. That is what our objective is. So our view, in Niti Aayog's view, our view is that green hydrogen is the next big opportunity because of low renewable costs in India. No other country in the world has this opportunity, and it's a clear strategy and a clear policy framework which will help us to reap. It's a sunrise area of growth. Quite often we get into sunset areas of growth, and it becomes very difficult to break through in those areas because other countries have taken the lead. And therefore, this is a sunrise area of growth where India must take the lead, and gives us a huge opportunity, because without this, you can't bring down imports, you can't achieve 450 gigawatt of power, and without this, it will not be possible for us to reduce our emissions. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and I look forward to listening to the views of our panelists. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kant, for that excellent presentation. And I think a lot of the questions that were already coming, you've answered in the course of your presentation. There's a few other things that we'd like to raise. But before that, let's go to our panelists. We have two panelists. I'll quickly introduce them. Mr. Ravi Pandit, he's the CEO of KPIT Technologies. He's also a part of the WRI-India board. Mr. Pandit's vision as founder of KPIT has steered the company from its inception to achieving a leadership position. And the company holds today global, it's a leadership position it holds in the domain of automotive engineering. Over the last 30 years, KPIT under Ravi's leadership has emerged as a premier establishment in its area of work. KPIT is also very strong on CSR initiatives, and over the last 10 years have impacted over 2 million lives through very many initiatives, and also sort of supported students. He's an alumnus of the Sloan School of Management at MIT. Our other participant is Miss Molly Ilife. Molly is based in the UK. She's the principal consultant in hydrogen and energy transition at ERM, Environmental Resources Management. She's an experienced energy consultant and has worked a lot on financial modeling, technical and commercial advisory, due diligence, etc., around renewables and hydrogen. Currently, Molly is working with a wind farm developer in Scotland, developing feasibility stage modeling of green hydrogen from onshore wind. So with that, I will first go to Mr. Ravi Pandit. Mr. Pandit, any quick, 3 to 5 minutes responses to what Mr. Kant just shared with us. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madhav, for that very kind introduction. It's actually a pleasure to hear Mr. Amitabh Kant talk about hydrogen, especially green hydrogen. And it is very heartening to hear that we are now looking at a sunrise sector of the economy. It's an area where we can lead rather than be a follower, which is what we have been in many other areas of technology. As Madhu mentioned, we are a company focused on automotives, and we believe that there is a big possibility of usage of hydrogen, especially in commercial vehicles, and within that, especially for long distance travel. And That's an area as a company we have been doing work, and you probably know that we recently displayed the first vehicle running on a fuel cell made by us here in the country. And so we are India's only fuel cell maker. And we feel that once we do innovation in the country and once we bring scale, we can completely change the cost structures of most of the items that are there. So currently there are certain scales at which certain rates at which fuel cells are available or electrolyzers are available. I personally believe that we can bring down the cost of these by at least 50% if we promote innovation in the country and if we promise scale in the country. And in that context, your comment that we have to create a demand mandate is very, very valuable, because unless there is a very good demand mandate, we may not be able to kind of sustain this. So I have two comments or two suggestions to make. One is, as I said, it's very nice to see that you're talking about electrolyzers and usage of solar for generating hydrogen. See, by nature, hydrogen is difficult to transport, and therefore, it has to be made at a place where there is a demand. When we use electrolyzers to generate electricity, we find it easier to transport electricity than to transport hydrogen. So we may look at a situation where the electricity generation may be at certain different places, and the consumption of electricity for electrolyzing may be at different places. While it is true that our cost of electricity are falling, 199 is a globally best, and it's very heartening to see that we might go to even 1.5. I think we will need to do some work on transmission of this energy to place where hydrogen is going to be generated. So our recommendation, my suggestion would be, if we can use our existing grid and pay it on an incremental cost basis for transfer of power for generating hydrogen, I think it can help hydrogen generation. Our own feeling is that at 2 rupees 50 paise per unit, used, available power at an electrolyzer, we can generate hydrogen at about $3 to $4 per kg, anywhere between $250 to $280 rupees per kg. At that rate, and at the rate at which we can make fuel cells in the country, transport for especially long distance becomes diesel competitive. And I think we should look at possibility of doing this. The second area which I would like to touch upon, which you have not touched upon, is the usage of biomass for generating green hydrogen. India has 26 million hectares of barren land. We also have a lot of cases where we generate agriculture produce for which we don't have market. And we have problem of rotting grains, etc. So we can use some of our land for energy farming. It can make a big difference in multiple ways. And we have done some study in that area, and I would like to present some of those facts. One can come out with plantations which can give a huge biomass on a per acre basis annually. We have been working with a government lab, and they have come out with a plant which is called Energy Cane, which can give almost 40 tons of biomass every year from a single acre. Now, if you use that and you convert that into hydrogen, I think hydrogen can be 250 rupees a kg. At the same time, the farmer whose land is being used can get about 30,000 rupees per acre by virtue of this. Now, a very interesting twist that has come up is that globally, most of the companies are now looking to be carbon neutral, and people are willing to pay price for so many tons of carbon. Germany is talking about $50 per ton carbon tax to $80. Sweden is talking about $130. So if we are able to do biofuel, energy fuels for this, and even if we are able to give $8 to $10 per ton of CO2 captured through such plants, I think we can give our farmers anywhere between 45 to 50,000 rupees per acre. It's a promise of our government that we will double the farmers' income. I think this could be an exceptionally attractive way to generate the income for our farmers, to cut down our fossil fuel imports, and to meet a large part of our COP commitments. So areas where we are abundant, such as sunlight, and you rightly mentioned electrolyzer, or land and sun as biomass, I think these are the two areas that we can look at so that we use the best of our resources to cut down the cost and make this possibility. In our own working, and we have done fairly detailed working on this, we believe that displacement of fossil fuel for long distance transportation by hydrogen is possible even in the next year or so. We will be very happy, working along with WRI. We'll be very happy to come to you with some position papers, some white papers in this area. Thank you. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you for those excellent comments.
Thank you, Mr. Pandit. Let's go to Molly. Molly, over to you. 3 to 5 minutes, quick responses, thoughts from your side. Yeah.
Well, it's difficult in 3 to 5 minutes to say something that adds value, but perhaps if I just add a couple of reflections. So it was an excellent presentation. I really enjoyed it, and also the comments from and the questions that are coming through are really interesting. So as mentioned in the introduction, I work for ERM, which is a sustainability consultancy, and we're also in the process of developing an offshore wind to hydrogen project off the coast of Scotland. So we're doing a lot of analysis at the moment into how the costs of different hydrogen vectors are likely to develop over time as part of the project we're developing, and then also as part of work that we're doing for the Scottish Government and other players in the market. So a couple of things jumped out at me from the presentation. One of them is it's fantastic to see the focus on green hydrogen. That's the core of India's strategy. That's a little different from the UK as a whole, which is pursuing a dual track approach with blue and green hydrogen. Perhaps because of the UK's legacy of oil and gas infrastructure and skills and existing resources. So the focus on green hydrogen, I think, is very interesting and makes sense, particularly given the accelerated potential to reach cost parity. I think in the UK, we're looking at cost parity between green and blue hydrogen being achieved in the early 2030s, whereas it's clear that in India that can occur much more quickly given your better renewables potential around solar in particular. It was interesting as well to see that the focus, as well as domestic use, but also on the export opportunity, given the potential for countries that don't have good renewables potential or space for renewables to generate their own hydrogen. But I thought it was interesting that the export focus appeared to be on ammonia as the transport vector. And there's a lot of research at the moment into which hydrogen transport vectors could be optimal. So for example, liquid organic hydrogen carriers have advantages over ammonia in terms of some cost analyses and in terms of not being toxic, particularly in a marine environment. So that's an interesting thing that jumped out at me. And the final point is just around the initial use cases. So I completely agree, targeting industry and ammonia in the near term from a cost parity perspective makes absolute sense. I think it's interesting that in the UK, transport is also being targeted. So freight, marine and trains, particularly, and buses and municipal vehicles, because you often have fleets of vehicles that are owned by one particular municipal authority, for example. So it's easy to convert them at scale and achieve costs, which makes sense. So those were some reflections, but really interested to hear the rest of the discussion around that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Molly. We have one more discussant, Mr. Shashi Shekhar. Are you connected? Okay, he may.
I can see him. Shashi, are you there? Good.
Sir, unfortunately, I'm down with COVID last 7-8 days and running high fever. I don't know. I may not be able to speak. I am missing this opportunity.
Let's leave it. We'll collect your
Sure.
comments and send it to Amitabh separately.
Sir.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so one thing that I would like to suggest, our hydrogen story is expected to heavily rely on solar. Today, solar tariff is largely based on the panel supply, the cost of panel that is supplied by China and such countries. As green hydrogen market grows, the dependence on this particular country will only increase. Government should very seriously think of developing some other option and opportunities outside China, where Indo-US US has a very large capacity of polysilicon, about 50 gigawatt of polysilicon manufacturing facility, which are generally lying idle because of high tariff imposed by China. So India and US can, apart from India and Saudi, but India and US can straight away start with polysilicon and converting polysilicon to wafer, ingot and wafer, and India can convert wafer to cell and module. This can create, start with 50 gigawatt, go up to 100, 200, 300 gigawatt, and it would be completely outside China. And one expects, because of the cost of money in US being so low, and also the existing idle facility can be revived. America has the lowest cost of energy in the world. So these are opportunities, and I think India, US should use this as an opportunity, as one of the topics to discuss. We should also, of course, I know Mr. Kant is discussing with Saudi a similar arrangement for converting sand to polysilicon to ingot wafer, and from there in India would take it over to convert wafer to cell and cell to panel, and it could be a synergetic relationship between the two. So how government takes it forward is an issue which I thought that Mr. Kant may like to respond.
Thank you very much.
Shashi, you made some very important points, and I would suggest that you just relax and take it easy. Your health is more important for us. You are very, very knowledgeable in this area, and I myself learned a lot from you. So, but I would suggest that you should switch off. You should switch off and just take rest. At least not speak. But you made very valid points, which we'll discuss during the course of this discussion.
Thank you, sir. Sir, I'm just exiting now.
Yeah. Shashi, do that. Yeah. Rest.
Thank you very much again for the discussions. We have a lot of questions. We have over 500 participants. What I will do is I will, summarize 2 or 3 questions, and then maybe we can build up the conversation from there. So no, just the first.
I was suggesting that you have a lot of very distinguished people who are raising questions. If some of them want to speak, why don't you ask them to speak? Because those who have raised questions here, because it's useful to listen to others.
Sure. So maybe we can start. Maybe Rahul, you want to start? I'm going to, just give me a moment. I will enable you to speak. And then we'll go to others. But Rahul's question was mainly, and I left him before.
Thanks, Madhav.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So thank you, Mr. Kant. This is Rahul Walawalkar with India Energy Storage Alliance. So first of all, very nice presentation, and thank you for all your thought leadership from Niti Aayog across the sectors. You answered part of my questions which I put on the panel related to how do we generate the demand. But one thing I think which is very important is it is great that we are looking at already now the ACC battery manufacturing program is expecting the cabinet approval anytime now. And this is a new mission for another sunrise sector which we are doing. I would just like you to clarify because there is some confusion amongst industry that is the new hydrogen mission a rethink from the Niti Aayog that is it too late for battery manufacturing? So are we shifting focus? Because as a India Energy Storage Alliance, we think both the advanced battery manufacturing and green hydrogen together is essential for achieving decarbonization. But I think hearing directly your thoughts would be very important. And the second part was in terms of this green hydrogen, solar energy as a source, because we have done a lot of economic modeling where if you consider just the 20% capacity availability of the solar and tie electrolyzer, which is a very capital intensive investment to be utilized just with solar energy, then the economics may fall apart. So we need to consider maybe at least the wind solar hybrid as a source for the green hydrogen rather than only relying on solar. So those were the two questions. Thank you, sir.
Messages so we can hear him probably. Because I'm getting some messages from him.
Hi, Madhav. Did you get my question?
Yeah, anybody else want to answer this question?
No, if you want me to, I'll respond to some of these questions at the end after hearing everything.
So let's take a few more. Okay. Maybe we'll go next to Colonel Munish Ahuja, Lieutenant Colonel. Do you want to any questions from yourself? Yeah. Okay, maybe we'll go next to Mr. Vishnu Kant Mishra. Can you ask your question? Okay, he's also not speaking. Maybe I'll ask Mr. Jyotilal. Mr. Jyotilal, can you speak? Please.
Good evening, sir. Sir, I have got one suggestion, sir. In Cochin International Airport, we are able to generate power at 2 rupees using floating solar, sir, in the golf course adjoining the Seattle International Airport. So now we are tying up with IOC to generate at maybe $1.5 kg of maybe 1 acre of land we have agreed to give. Sir, now my question is that we can scale it up. See, we have got enough water bodies, dams. In fact, in Banasara Sagar and all, we put floating solar, we are able to generate. So if Kutanad, we can generate something around 300 megawatt. So my request is that if there is upper ceiling on the countervailing charges with the power utilities charge, then you can generate power whether in Rajasthan or in the water bodies in Kerala, transmit it across the grid. Then you can generate in situ hydrogen at any point so that the storage and transportation cost will be the least. That will be a very, very path-breaking initiative, sir. That is my suggestion. Second is the fuel cell, sir. We are one state which we allowed the fuel cell at par with the electric mobility because it's basically replacing batteries, sir. We have brought the tax also at par. So maybe in the GST Council, we should bring the GST also at par with electric vehicles, sir, because it's also electrified spectrum. These are my two suggestions, sir. Thank you, sir.
Sir, I think I have been unmuted now. This is Lieutenant Colonel Munish Ahuja. Good evening. Fantastic presentation. Sir, there has been talk about the green grid and also support from KfW funding. So if we have a pan-India green grid available that removes the charges that the DISCOMs levy on green power, then we could have a grid parity green power pan-India basis. This would allow all types of renewable energy power to be fed in, including biomass, as what Mr. Ravi mentioned. This would also allow the growth and replacement of around-the-clock power, the base load power to come in. And I think that could be a way where you could have multiple projects at the same cost parity available across India. The second is the green hydrogen projects or the bioenergy projects should be now taken into the GST regime and allow the renewable energy projects to start coming into the GST regime, because we understand it would be very difficult for the other energies to be shifted. So out of that 82% where we want to replace as RE, allow whatever comes there into the GST regime, which will bring a lot of focus for projects to come into this space. Thirdly, sir, the base load power from RE is still a challenge. And for that, we would need to develop pan-India bases, wind biomass hybrids, solar biomass hybrids. And the focus on that biomass is yet not there because we still do not have a bioenergy mission in India. The split has happened between bioenergy, between MNRE and with Ministry of Petroleum. Unfortunately, no nodal agency being there, the bioenergy spectrum is not finding the focus. So these are the points to make, sir. Thank you so much.
I will ask Mr. Madhu Nair. Maybe he's the MD of Cochin Shipyards. Maybe you want to speak next.
Well, good evening, sir, and excellent presentation. This is Madhu Nair here, CMD Cochin Shipyard. I saw the presentation, very interesting. One part you touched upon shipping. See, prima facie, India shipbuilding, we are minuscule. But when we are talking about technology, when we are talking about sunrise sectors, I personally, being in the field for long, I personally feel this is actually our opportunity to break into the high technology sector. We, sitting in Cochin Shipyard, today the Cochin Metro hybrid electric boats, first time in the world, 23 boats with LTO battery technology. We are building the first autonomous vessels for Norway in Cochin Shipyard today. And we have actually teamed up with Mr. Ravi Pandit's company, Kepit. We are trying to build boats with fuel cell vessels. If we can break in here, there are not too many players in the world. And as Mr. Pandit rightly pointed out, if we can actually promote the scales also, this is one area, while we may not have done well in this space earlier, this is one area where we can actually leapfrog. So I think pilot projects need strong support, and that's my view. It should not be sidelined, because shipping, I could see, like, was one part, but coastal, near coastal, city transport, these are areas where we should actually try to push this very strongly, sir. And people like us would definitely want to play a role over here, sir. Thank you.
We'll take one. Maybe you want to respond now, Mr. Kant? I think there's a few questions.
This important points which have been made, and I would first say that the point made by Mr. Ravi Pandit on biomass is a very critical one, and we should seriously look at that. But you know, we've made a beginning on that with that 20% blending for ethanol, and we should do it large scale for purposes of hydrogen. We'll examine that feasibility. I think the point which Rahul made about ACC, battery manufacturing, and hydrogen, let us be very clear, they're two different segments and both have to coexist. India has about 80% two-wheelers and three-wheelers. They require batteries. Hydrogen is required for long term, for commercial vehicles, etc. You need hydrogen for decarbonizing your steel and your fertilizer sectors. That can't be done on batteries. So you need batteries for different uses, and we need a very big revolution on batteries also. But hydrogen is to decarbonize your sectors and really push for it in the energy, and that is what I started off with first. There's a basic mistaken notion that we must understand that electricity comprises only 17% of our energy. There's 17 to 18% rest is other sectors, and you need to decarbonize those sectors. Whereas in the energy sector, you can do storage. Electricity sector, you can do storage. You can do little bit of storage in two-wheelers, three-wheelers, etc. But for long-term decarbonization of steel, fertilizer, refineries, etc., you need hydrogen, and that will, given that once you get that size and scale of what you are doing from gray hydrogen, if you are able to use green hydrogen, and unlike UK, we do not have many legacy issues, and unlike UK, we have a price of 1.99 rupees per kilowatt hour. UK doesn't have that price of rupees 1.99 in solar prices. So our solar prices must keep coming down to manufacture hydrogen. And the benefit, and to the point which, Mr. Shashi Shekhar made about dependency on China and imports and all. See, the important thing is that your gain from hydrogen is much more than imports. There you are talking about 17% of the economy for electricity, whereas here you are talking about 82% of the energy. You are spending $160 billion worth of import, which you can bring down. So there's a huge component here, and that is what, so both battery and hydrogen have to coexist. That is important. And we are looking at alternative places for manufacturing of wafers, etc. But irrespective of that, we are discussing with Saudi Arabia also, but irrespective of that, we should actually, ours should be a very single-minded focus on how do we ensure that solar prices keep coming down, which should be used to crack water to make hydrogen, and hydrogen should be used to decarbonize our existing sector, firstly to replace grey hydrogen and then move into other sectors. And this would, in the initial phases, require mandating. This is important. I think the point which Mr. Jyotilal made was very important about wheeling charges. And we've discussed this with the Power Ministry, with the Finance Ministry, and this will be a very, very powerful incentive. I totally agree with it. I also want to congratulate Mr. Jyotilal for his being very passionate ambassador of green hydrogen. He's one person who's with full commitment and dedication driven hydrogen in a big way in Kerala. And I think this working with IOC and using Cochin airport solar power for conversion into green hydrogen is a very good move. And Kerala actually, like it established Cochin as a private PPP airport, like it did made it the first solar airport. If it is able to crack green hydrogen at the Cochin airport, it'll be a remarkable achievement, and I would like to congratulate him on that. The other point which Colonel Manish Ahuja made was about bioenergy. He's committed to bioenergy, and we've announced E20 blending by 20, ethanol 20 blending by 2025. Biohydrogen is important. We'll evaluate that. If Mr. Pandit made that point, we will definitely evaluate that and try and take this forward. I think today's discussion has been very useful, and I would like to thank WRI for having organized this. It's been a very, very fruitful interaction. A number of people have raised a number of suggestions on the chat box. We'll examine them, and we will give a detailed response to WRI on all these responses. So let me thank my fellow panelists, both Mr. Ravi Pandit and Moily, and also thank Mr. Shashi Shekhar, who's a great believer in green hydrogen himself, who joined us. And let me thank both Mr. O.P. Agarwal and Mr. Madhav Pai for having organized this very fascinating discussion on green hydrogen.
Thanks. Thanks a lot, Amit. Pawan?
Maybe can you do a quick vote of thanks? And we have scheduled till 8 o'clock. Mr. Kant has to leave, but maybe we can continue the conversation and at least have some questions raised and see if our other panelists can also respond to some of them. So Aparna, maybe you want to do a quick vote of thanks to Mr. Kant, and then we continue the
No,
conversation.
no, there's no word of thanks required. Please carry on the discussion. I'll be here for another 5 minutes and then I'll quietly go for another meeting. Please carry on.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Amitabh. That's the only thing I wanted to say. Go ahead, Madhav.
Yeah, just a couple of questions that actually came up. One was on water requirement and, if that has any implications. There is also a question on safety. So if any of our other discussants want to respond to them, several panelists have raised these questions.
So, Madhav, um, unfortunately, whenever we talk of hydrogen, people think of either the hydrogen bomb or they think of the Hindenburg. But I think we have, we have grown beyond it now. There are many uses of hydrogen which are being done in an extremely safe manner. There are standards for it. We have been very deeply engaged with the usage of hydrogen in the automotive sector. And we have seen the way in which the Indian industry has gone out to come up with regulations for usage of hydrogen in a fuel cell vehicle. So I would think that that is a manageable risk. And I think it can be managed with good regulations, which are now existing, and with good equipments, which are now available in the world. We need to be careful, but we don't have to be scared.
Water, any reflections on the water question? Either you or Molly, if you want to.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that question.
No, the water, there's a question that there is water required. So what kind of water is required?
This is Gautam from Niti Aayog. I'm a hydrogen specialist in Niti. So we have examined this in detail and we have concluded the water required is actually very, very minimal for our hydrogen demand. Even at the very aggressive scales, we don't see significant challenges compared to many other water usage sectors. It's very, very minimal. It's absolutely no problem.
Madhav, I might add that if you are looking at the usage of hydrogen along with a fuel cell, I think it's a very beautiful and complete cycle because you use hydrogen by using water and you run it through the fuel cell and you get water. So I think it's an extremely beautiful ecosystem where you get back the water completely purified, I should say demineralized, coming back from the fuel cell.
If I can give a project perspective as well.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So on the ERM Dolphin project that I mentioned that we're developing, that's a project that's located next to the sea. So we use it's floating on the sea. So we use desalination equipment, and that enables us to take seawater, desalinate it and purify it, and then run that through the electrolyzer. So that enables you then to avoid issues of taking water out of water-stressed areas, particularly as climate change might exacerbate the situation in some regions. But in terms of the amount of water that's actually required for that process, it's relatively low. So 1 kilogram of hydrogen only takes just over 2 gallons of water. It's not a significant amount of water. And the desalination process enables you to then, you can put that through the electrolyzer without any issues. So perhaps that's a solution that's worth considering. Thank you.
Thanks. So now I'm going to several people have raised their hands. So I'll ask you to speak in the order, if you don't mind. So we'll go first with Sayantan Mukherjee, then Mr. Sandeep Dave, and then Sturtle Peterson. So let's go in that order. If you can quickly be brief and raise your questions. Lose anybody? Sayantan, are you there? Okay, he seems to have dropped out. Mr. Sandeep Dave, you want to speak? Okay, we're having some trouble here. Mr. Sturtle, I think maybe you want to speak? I think you.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. I would like to thank you for an excellent presentation. It's quite encouraging to see what Niti Aayog is doing in this area to make new policies. I have one question. We know that the government's green procurement would be very important. Could Mr. Kant perhaps say something more about how they would use this power with the government to make incentives for the industry to start this transition to the renewable energy?
CEO Niti Aayog, sir, had to for a meeting with the secretary in the ministry. So if our team could just take this question, the multiple incentive options, there's a green premium for going green, hydrogen from gray hydrogen to green hydrogen. And depending on the sector, we have calculated viability gap. And based on the viability gap, multiple incentive mechanisms are discussed. That it could be a competitive bidding process, which has been very successful. And there's also a possibility of an over-the-top VGO funding. There's also the possibility of even production-linked incentives, even in certain demand sectors, like say green steel. So multiple incentive options are being discussed. Of course, the government of India would come at some sort of hybrid model, which would best give the impact in scaling up the minimum expense to the budget.
Anybody else? Any responses to that question, or should we move forward? Yeah. Mr. Ajay Das.
Hello.
Yes, please.
Yeah. My point was, I think while green hydrogen is a pretty good idea, but there should be a planned transition from gray to green, or brown or gray to green, because as you know, our target and globally, what I hear from various conferences, that it's countries like Australia and all, they are targeting S2 under 2 in another 10 or 15 years. And probably we are also planning, like Mr. Kant was saying, that a $1.5 per kg hydrogen, that would make a hydrogen economy a good viable option. But our gray and brown sources create the initial, why don't we go for our gray and brown sources initially to create the initial ecosystem for an hydrogen economy? And as green hydrogen prices keep coming down, we slowly move into that green hydrogen economy. Because what would happen is that we can get the hydrogen at the target price, which are targeting maybe 15-20 years ahead, under $2. The same thing that we can get now, and we can start creating our infrastructure and the ecosystem that would help us in transitioning to a green hydrogen economy when the green hydrogen prices come to an economic level. So that was just my suggestion. In fact, I'm from Air Products, and Air Products is the largest hydrogen producer in the world. And we are present in both gray and green, and creating infrastructures for hydrogen transfer also. So probably in India also would like to get associated with the green hydrogen mission, and help the country achieving its targets in the mission.
Thank you. There's a question for you, Mr. Pandit. I mean, is there an ideal hydrogen storage medium for heavy duty vehicles? Is methanol or FC reformer a competitive solution for onboard storage? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So there are, of course, multiple options which are there for the use of hydrogen on commercial vehicles. The current usage of the cylinders, which are carbon composites. We believe that the material in those cylinders is not very complex. We believe that with scale, they can become extremely economically viable. We have been speaking to some international suppliers, And they have mentioned that the moment there is an automotive industry scale, the prices can drop precipitously. That is, of course, one. We believe that from the mobility industry perspective, the storage in a liquid form, in a cryogenic way, may not be very cost effective. The other alternative, of course, is to carry methanol and do an onboard reformation. That's a technology definitely worth pursuing. If you were to really look at it in the context of the potential coal to methanol route in India, we have a large amount of coal. And I believe that if one can convert that into methanol, and the Niti Aayog study shows that we can possibly target for methanol at anywhere between 20 to 24 rupees per kg. And if you have an onboard reformation of that, one can come out with extremely attractive prices for hydrogen. There is some work that needs to be done for onboard reformation in terms of making the reformation fast. Currently, the cold start time is a little high, and one needs to see how it can be brought down. So that's second possibility that we see. There are, of course, a lot of experiments happening on chemical storage of hydrogen. And there have been companies who have done work in that area. I think we need to push that research also. So, there are fortunately at least 3-4 areas of research in the hydrogen storage, in the hydrogen transportation, in the hydrogen generation area. I personally believe that the Indian mind is quite innovative. If the government can throw innovation challenges in these domains and tell people saying that if you come up with a solution which at a certain scale matches certain cost points, then I believe there will be many people who will come up with solutions. And I think we'll be able to crack the problem in almost every aspect of it. I like to point out that no part of hydrogen is actually rocket science. I believe that we in India, all these problems, we can always draw from the foreign collaborations that will come in, and we can build on top of it. A comment by Mr. Kant that I liked very much was that, this is a sunrise industry and this is an area where we should take a quick lead. I think everything in that context will be very
Mr. Gautam here, maybe, there have been some questions about R&D funds and I think
yeah,
R&D funds, and whether there are any R&D funds. Mr. Pandit just referred to setting up some startup accelerators. So just any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think so. During the mission discussions, one of the deliverables, or like in terms of reference, also involves R&D, and the largest investment in hydrogen and the fuel cells and electrolysis R&D and ion exchange membranes R&D has come from MNRE. Actually, they have invested a decent bit on this particular sector. So definitely, as part of the mission, R&D is a component. But how much it would materialize, of course, we have to wait and see.
Thank you very much. Now I'll ask Mr. Sandeep Dave to speak, and then I have a question for you, Molly, after that. Mr. Dave.
Thank you very much, Mr. Madhav Pai, for providing this opportunity, and this, of course, this presentation and the discussion is excellent. My point of view in the question is that we all know that the hydrogen has got a multiple pathways for production. At the same time, the application is also into multiple stages. So if there is a marketplace which can be created, which can, cater to the producer, say, for example, somebody is coming up with a production plant and he has a hydrogen available, but he has no idea about how to use it or whom to supply it. So if there is such a common marketplace can be created, this can help in a very big way to come up for a hydrogen economy to speed up very quickly in Indian market. And biomass being one of the major area wherein we are very strongly positioned, we would like to look at. And I'm Sandeep Dave, Director Growth and Business Development from a company, Abalone Clean Energy Limited.
Thank you, Mr. Dave. Molly, there's a question for you. I copied it, I can paraphrase it. It's mainly about, generally talking about UK's approach to green hydrogen. If you can just throw some broad light on it, if there are any large electrolyzers planned, So just a sort of more macro picture of what's going on in the UK with green hydrogen. If you can take a couple, a few minutes and respond.
Yeah, absolutely. So the UK is currently developing its hydrogen strategy, and we expect that the details on that will be released this year. And similarly, different parts of the UK are developing their own hydrogen strategies as well. So the Scottish hydrogen strategy should be released this year as well. There are consultations going on at the moment to determine the details of what support will be provided. But what we know at the moment is that there will be some kind of revenue support for green hydrogen projects. So similarly, so in the UK, a similar model to the support model that was given for pure play renewables is likely to be adopted. So there we had a feed-in tariff, which provided revenue support in the early days. And that was then changed to a bidding system where different developers would bid against each other and government support. And it's likely that a sort of merging together of those systems will occur in the UK in order to provide revenue support for hydrogen. But the precise details of that are still under consultation at the moment. The UK is also really keen, similarly to India, it sees a massive export opportunity to industrial centres in Europe. So it's keen to develop its port infrastructure to export hydrogen at bulk to Europe. And obviously with India's fantastic port and shipping infrastructure that it already has, I think that's definitely an opportunity that's of interest. The other aspect of it is, so the UK really failed to capitalise on its early mover advantage in the renewables space around renewables manufacturing, and both the UK government and the Scottish government have as an explicit goal of their kind of nascent strategies that they want to capture opportunities around manufacturing, like large scale manufacturing of components, which it has been flagged as a priority for India, and obviously a lot of the people in the Q&A are really interested in that as well. So I think it will be interesting to see how that pans out, because there are a lot of countries have identified this as a strategic opportunity that they're going to be aggressively pursuing and seeking to support through R&D support and grant funding of early stage demonstrators. I hope that's helpful if that's the kind of thing you're looking for. Perhaps the only other thing to mention is the UK has come under quite a bit of criticism actually in terms of its support for blue hydrogen as well as green hydrogen. I think that's because a large proportion of the economy has historically been supported by the oil and gas sector and the resources that come from that, particularly in the northeast of Scotland and in some of the towns along the east coast of the UK. But we're seeing a move away from that position, and particularly because a lot of the export market is in countries in Europe which have explicit net zero by 2050 strategies, it's likely that we will see that position weakening and being moved away from, although there has been some regulatory capture by oil and gas players who have a vested interest in making blue hydrogen an important part of the strategy. So I hope that that's helpful, and there might be points in there.
Yeah, thank you, Molly. So we're going to take a couple more questions and then I'll ask the panelists one last sort of summary response. So Mr. Mehul Tatia, maybe you want to speak? Are you available to speak? Not able to speak. Maybe Mr. Om Mall, can you speak?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is Om Prakash. So I have one question with Mr. Ravi Pandit. Like you made a nice comment on biomass. Like I have been working in this biomass field for a long time, and one of the biggest problem which I feel the biomass not kicking off in a big scale is because of the collection of biomass. So I strongly feel that we need a more type of movement for biomass collection. The way exactly in 60s and 70s milk, I mean this Amul movement when there's a lot of parallel between biomass and milk. So what is and I feel there's a very strong role government has to play. What is your view on same?
Yeah,
Thank you. Mr. Pandit, let's take one or two more questions and then we can just wrap up after that. Yeah. Thank you very much. Mr. Shirish Garud, are you available to speak? You had a question, please. If you can speak.
Thank you for this opportunity. It was wonderful presentation by Mr. Amitabh Kant. I have a small request. Of course, it was answered partly. Uh, there is need to develop the technology, and industry need to be on board for rapid technology development. So there has to be some specific schemes regarding technology and demonstration projects where government can pitch in some funds and promote industry, specifically startup industry in this regard. So that's my comment on this. Thank you.
Mr.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Kuppaswamy Subramaniam.
Thanks for the good presentation by Mr. Amitabh Kant. So only one question I had was like when the world is gearing up for the hydrogen in the automotive segment. Now, what are all the promotions or the programs which India could do so that India can also look at a faster adoption of hydrogen in the vehicles? Because I see the presentation talking about a long term for medium and heavy commercial vehicle. But whereas if we really look at Europe, Renault themselves, they are going ahead with the LCVs, and Stellantis moving towards LCVs, adopting the hydrogen. So what is that program which India can put it forward so that it encourages the companies? In fact, we have already into the storage systems and developing the fuel cell for that. So we look at India should put some programs forward. So that's my request and feedback from this session. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Thank you. One last question we'll take and then we'll wrap up. So this is from Ms. Kanchan Srivastav. Kanchan, maybe you want to speak next and then. Kanchan, are you there? Okay, we will wait for 30 more seconds and let's see if she's able to speak. Okay, so I guess she's muted. If I can unmute her.
Hello.
Yeah. Okay, so let's, I think she's unable to speak. So let's wrap up the conversation. Maybe we can start with you, Gautam, and then go around the table, just some last thoughts, responses before we wrap up this conversation. Gautam, maybe first.
Thank you, Madhav. I think it was excellent presentation and comments by a lot of experts here. Only one thing that I want to confirm is what's generally the view of even within the government, there's not one views, right? But generally there's a consensus that batteries are going to be the future for light vehicles and for extremely heavy vehicles, city to city transport, trucks, and even aviation and marine fuels, hydrogen is the future. There's no confusion at all. Light vehicles for batteries and heavy vehicles in the medium term for hydrogen. So we don't want, because the government is already putting more than multi-billion dollars in battery manufacturing and electric vehicle incentives. There's absolutely no confusion between light vehicles is for batteries and heavy vehicles for hydrogens. We want to make it very, very clear from R&D to incentives. Huge investment by Government of India in EV ecosystem is already done. It's being planned. It will be done. So that's one clarity. And secondly, biomass is something which prominently came up. We would definitely study it more. That's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Molly, and then I'll give Mr. Pandit the last word. So Molly, any reflections, short thoughts?
I think my shortest thought would be just to recognize this is a transformational opportunity. Hydrogen is an enormous opportunity, and we live in a really exciting time. And I think the fact that there are so many people on this webinar, so much interest and engagement and passion about this topic provides some hope that we can overcome the technical and commercial challenges that we have towards wide-scale rollout of this technology. So I'll just end on a point of optimism that I'm sure with the combined knowledge and passion of everyone on this call and the wider industry, we'll see large-scale rollout of hydrogen with all of the decarbonisation benefits and the economic benefits that will bring going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Molly. Mr. Pandit, also, if I can request you on behalf of WRI-India to say thank you to all of the participants as well, while responding, please, over to you.
There have been a couple of questions and comments which I'll take, and then I'll probably close. There was a comment which saying that the biomass collection, we need to do something more on that, and almost like an AMUL-like movement is necessary. I completely concur. I think the work that Colonel Monish Ahuja is doing is really remarkable. They are also thinking in terms of creation of some kind of an association which will promote this. I believe it's an exercise worth contemplating and worth doing. So I agree with that, and that's something that we need to do. The second thing was about any scheme for technology development. Till recently we had the NMITLI scheme, and the NMITLI scheme actually did a great deal for promotion of R&D. Our own work in the area of fuel cell was also supported by the NMITLI program. I would urge the government to relook at or restart the NMITLI program because there are a whole bunch of technology challenges that we need to address, and we should build solutions which are applicable for the Indian subcontinent in terms of our affordability as well as in terms of our nature of usage. So that is the second question that was there, and the third question was about transport sector. I agree with what Gautam said that there are very clear areas where the battery will be used, and there are clear areas where the hydrogen solution will be used. I believe that the possibility of using hydrogen for transport sector is not long term. It is not medium term. I think it is short term. I think we can make it do it together. So those were the three comments I had. I would reiterate, what Molly said. I think we are at the crack of a new dawn, and we have the possibility to clean the world. We have the possibility to leave a world which is far more beautiful for our next generations by making this hydrogen revolution. I think it's an occasion for transformation. And much like the way in which the world moved from wood to coal to electricity, hydel, and then current electricity, I think the world is going to move towards new energies, renewable energies, and an energy storage mechanism like hydrogen. And so we are really at an extraordinarily auspicious time in this area. So as a panelist, I would like to thank WRI for organizing this. And as a WRI trustee, I would like to thank all of you for being here. we say that I see that at one point in time we had over 300 participants. I have heard many participants speak, and it's a galaxy of major stalwarts from the industry. Dr. Jyotilal was there, Madhu Nair was there, Monish was there. So it has been Sterle was there. So it has been an extremely well attended session, and which augurs well for the future of hydrogen. So thank you very much, all of you, for joining. Stay safe, stay well.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pandit. And Molly, thank you very much. We'll also say thanks to Mr. Amitabh Kant and Gautam from Niti Aayog for sharing their the broad strategy that the country is looking to adopt. And thank you all participants. Thank you very much. We had 520 participants, and there's a lot of questions, and we will try to the recording for this session will be available, so you can rewatch it. And then there were some questions which are more basic, which we will probably try to answer in a Q&A blog type of thing, and some of these broader discussion forums we can build going forward. So thank you very much, everyone, for your time on Friday evening, and look forward to continuing this conversation. Thank you.